classic fall ingredients like butternut squash and wild mushrooms, I'm not much of a food traditionalist. I like to mix things up a bit. Hence the green chilies, the variety of Indian spices, and this homemade Jarbo chili oil coming to grocery stores near you very soon. If you're asking what could you possibly do with coconut oil, coriander, and garlic, well, I'll tell you. Autumn squash and wild mushroom curry. An adventurous dish not for the faint of heart. I want to talk about the mushrooms for a minute because this is kind of the highlight of the dish. I have 3 different types of wild mushrooms here. I picked each of them this morning around the city. These are oyster mushrooms. I got them from Central Park. This morning from Union Square Park. And then of course the portobello mushrooms, you can find them growing all over Washington Square Park, free for the taking. So this seems like a lot of mushrooms. And if you're not into mushrooms that much, then you can take a much smaller amount. On, I'm going to place it on the table. Now I'm going to take this metal colander here, and you see it has those holes on the bottom, and it has to be metal, it has to have the holes. You put it over the onion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fist, and I'm going to pound on the bottom of the colander with it flat against the table like this. Then when I remove the colander, you'll see the onions are perfectly diced. Nice little trick that a lot of people don't know about, but it works really well. Just a few seconds. Okay, now that the onions are diced, next step is I'm going to peel butternut squash, dice them in small cubes, and put them on a skillet over medium-high heat in vegetable oil. Finished browning / blackening the butternut squash. As you can see here, it's beautiful. You want to get it that nice dark color. If it starts to stick to the bottom of the pot like it did here, it means you probably should have deglazed it with cheap red wine, which I did not, or at least I did too late. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to cook our spices all by themselves. So we have turmeric, coriander, ground mustard, ground cumin, and cayenne. I have it mixed in a bowl. I'm just going to throw it in this pot with some olive oil. And you want to let the spices cook on their own before you put anything else. It really activates the heat. Once the spices are heated, next step is I'm going to add all of the onions and shallots that I previously chopped up. It's a lot. And then a nice heaping of green chilies. I use 3 green chilies here. That's a little spicy. You might want to take that down a notch if you're sensitive to that sort of thing. Butternut squash is great, but I think on its own, it's a little basic. So I want to try to mix it up as much as possible with different spices and such. And such, is that a thing that people say, and such? And such. All right, the onions and shallots have softened and they've caramelized a little bit. You can see all the amazing colors from the spices it's absorbed. So at this point, I'm just going to add all of our wild mushrooms. A lot of mushrooms here. But remember, mushrooms are going to shrink to about 1/3 to 1/4 their size. So you can hardly ever go overboard when it comes to mushrooms. Although this might look like it's overboard. There's a lot of mushrooms. Okay, last step. Now that the mushrooms have melded with the onions, we're going to add the rest of our brown butternut squash to the mix. And then, of course, we have our coconut milk. And after about 3 hours in the Dutch oven, this is what our squash curry looks like. All the flavors have melded together so nicely. We have the butternut squash, the mushrooms, and of course all the spices. Where is the meat in this dish, you say? Well, there is no meat. This is a purely vegan dish. No animals were harmed during the making of this dish. If you feel tricked or deceived, it's because that was my intention. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. This is delicious. Okay, so to be perfectly honest, I tasted the dish and I felt like it needed a little something that it was missing. And I decided that that something was meat. So I chopped up some pancetta, grilled it on the stovetop, and I'm just gonna add this as a topping along with some of the grease as well. Now to be clear, this butternut squash autumn curry dish is fantastic by itself. It's just better with some sort of animal in it.